Hi, I'm Chef Julia Dunaway, and today I'm going to be making Japchae, which is also known as Korean noodle salad. And it's a noodle salad that's made with potato starch noodles. They're sometimes called sweet potato noodles, or sometimes you'll see the label will not really even say what it's made out of, but they'll be, just kind of these large, dark noodles. And they're really good, they're different. So we're gonna try making those today. They're made with sweet potato starch. But before we get started with the noodles, I've got my water boiling. I'm going to be blanching some spinach here in a minute. But the first thing I'm gonna be making is the sesame ginger tofu that goes into our japchae salad, because this is plant-based. All my food is plant-based, no oil. So what I'm taking is some organic extra firm tofu. It's a brand I get all the time. It's Nasoya. You can't really see it. My label kind of got cut off, but I'll put it in the show notes. So this is the brand I get. You can get it at Walmart, anywhere. And what I do with it is I wrap it in a paper towel, just a simple paper towel, and then I wrap the paper towel to wrap tofu in a cotton cloth. I have a lot of these 100% cotton cloths. And then I take the whole thing and just sit it under, I put a plastic cutting board on top of it and set a book on top of it and just let it sit for about half an hour. And in that time period, what happens is all the water gets pressed out of the tofu, and so then it's, it doesn't have the water in it. And what that does is it helps it absorb whatever marinade you put in your tofu. If the tofu's wet, it doesn't soak anything up. I guess it's kind of like a wet sponge. Once the sponge is wet, you can't wipe anything off because it's wet. Well, tofu's the same way. I hate to compare it to a sponge, but kind of the same analogy, that if it's dry and not wet, then it has the ability to soak up the marinade. So I'm gonna cut my tofu in half. I'm gonna cut each of those pieces in half and each of those pieces in half. And then I end up with 8 equal pieces. And then I can use those to put in the salad, and I'll probably cut them up into cubes at some point. But right now I'm just gonna have them in slabs and put them here in my glass dish. There should be 8 of them. They don't really fit super well. I can stack one of them. So there they are in my dish, and then I'll make my marinade, which is really, really simple. But I'm making this for you from start to finish because it is such a popular recipe. People are always asking about it. And a lot of times I just start out with the tofu already made, and I realize probably people don't really know how I make it. So I might as well make it in front of you. And this is my tahini. It's sesame ginger tofu. So the ginger part is using this tahini, and this tahini I really like. It's Mighty Sesame tahini. And this particular brand is squeezable, which I really like, and you don't have to get your jar out and stir it and mess with it and do a bunch of stuff. So it really makes it much easier to use than some of the other brands that you have to open it up and there's a big pool of oil. I'm trying to mix this up a little. I probably should have mixed it up before I put the tofu in. So if you're doing this later, mix up your ingredients and then put the tofu in, and then you don't end up having to try to mix it together when you've already got the tofu in. But it doesn't matter. It won't make any difference at all once we have the final ingredient. I'm kind of rotating that one piece that's a little bit not fitted in here. Use a bigger glass dish when you're doing this. I'll use my cotton cloth for my hands now. Okay, so then we're gonna add, we have the sesame part from the tahini. Now we need our ginger part, which I'm going to use ginger powder, about 1/2 teaspoon. Usually I use fresh grated ginger, but for some reason my ginger was no good. 1/2 teaspoon. It was kind of not in good shape, so I need some more ginger, but ginger powder works fine. So if you can always substitute things, it doesn't hurt. And then I'm gonna just put in a clove of garlic, grated, okay? So that's the garlic, ginger, sesame, a little bit of low sodium soy sauce. And if you don't like soy sauce, I know some people follow gluten-free or don't really like soy sauce, you can use anything you like. You can use coconut aminos. I'm going to just grate this garlic so it's really fine. You can use coconut aminos, didn't grate very well, or Bragg's, or any of those kind of substitutes for soy sauce. If you don't want to use soy sauce, it doesn't really matter. But something that makes it into a sauce. I prefer the low sodium soy sauce, personally. Don't use full strength soy sauce though, definitely, because I did that once because I was out of low sodium soy sauce. Oh my goodness, it was the saltiest, most terrible. It wasn't terrible, but if you don't really like really salty food, it was way salty. It was kind of bad. I couldn't really eat it because I'm kind of sensitive to super high sodium food. Okay, so all I did was move it around in the sauce. We don't have to marinate it. You could marinate it for 30 minutes, but I found that when I'm using it in a strong flavored dish like this salad, which has a really strong dressing, it's not necessary to marinate it. It's just fine, because we're gonna cook it in the oven for about 30 minutes, 25 minutes on 400, 30 if you like it really extra dark. So in that time, it kind of has plenty of time to absorb all this. And then we're just gonna lay it here on a parchment lined baking sheet. I've got little pieces of garlic on here that I'm kind of moving off to the side. And we could use these, and I use this sesame ginger tofu in so many different dishes. I use it on top of salads. I use it in making fried rice, just all kinds of things, noodle dishes, and it goes good even on salads. But it's one of my standby dishes that I make a lot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this tofu and I'm going to put it in the oven. I don't have my oven on that's behind me because it would heat up the room terribly. So I'm taking it into a different part of my house and putting it in that oven for 25 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next part of our demonstration. So I'll be back in a second to do the next part. See you in a minute. All right, I'm ready to go on with the rest of this recipe, and we're going to start with our spinach. So I had one of those big bunches of spinach, not the kind in the package called baby spinach, all washed. This was just your spinach all in a big bunch, and I washed it really well, and I removed most of the stems. I just wanted to show you a stem so I could take it off for you. You don't have to remove the young tender ones. They're real thin, but the big thick ones, those really don't taste very good to me, so I tend to remove those. And I've got my water boiling over here, so make sure the lid is hot. So let me take the lid off. And I'm just gonna put this spinach, this nice washed spinach, in my water, and only for about 20 seconds. It doesn't take long to cook spinach. I've got my spider tool here, and 20 seconds goes by really fast. So I'm counting it, and I'll let you know when it's done, and then I'm gonna plunge this into ice water. Okay, so I have a bowl of ice water already ready. And so I'm just letting my spinach, I didn't bring it back to a boil. I'm just letting it sit in here for 20 seconds, and it's about done, because now that's 20 seconds. And I'm going to take it out and put it in the ice water. And you'll see that it's shrunk down to very little bit of spinach. It was a huge bunch of spinach. And then once it's been cooked, there's not much of it left. It's like with any greens, you're just amazed at, out of that huge bowl of spinach, we came out with just this little bit. And that's fine. We don't really need a lot. It's just one of many ingredients that are going to be in our salad. And the Korean Japchae salad, I'm going to move this over here. The ingredients, I guess I should have told you what the ingredients were before we got started. But of course it has the sweet potato starch noodles. It's going to have red bell pepper. I have some trumpet mushrooms, which are a little bit different, but we could have also used shiitake mushrooms or oyster mushrooms. But today I found some really pretty nice king trumpet mushrooms at the grocery store, some carrots, I have some onions I picked from my vegetable garden because right now I'm getting lots of vegetables from the garden. Scallions to put on top. Garlic, of course. And I even have I picked a couple jalapenos from my garden this morning, and I thought I'm gonna add those because I like them. So why not put it in things I like? You don't have to put them in yours. It's probably not traditional, but that's okay. So I'm gonna bring my water back to a boil because I'm gonna use the spinach water to cook the noodles. Why waste why throw this water away when we don't have to? And I'm gonna drain my spinach. I'll do that. And then I'm going to season the spinach a little bit with some garlic and salt. So I'm going to kind of squeeze it out. I'll show you. I'm just going to take the spinach and squeeze the water out. And this is funny because I eat greens like this every morning. My daily greens, I blanch them for 30 seconds and I squeeze all the water out of them, and then I put a little bit of soy sauce, plum vinegar, and a thing called Eden Shake, which is a seaweed sesame blend. And that's my daily breakfast. I know it sounds weird, but I like to eat a lot of greens because I follow a really healthy, whole food, plant-based way of eating. And that's what we eat. We eat a lot of greens. So I'm gonna find a bowl here. So imagine all that spinach turns out to be just this little bunch. I'm gonna just kind of run my knife through it so they're not in such big pieces. Put them in a bowl. All of them fit in this tiny little bowl. So yeah, but I use super greens, a little pinch of salt, which I get them in the grocery store. They're, they sell all different kinds. I think Costco has them too, but it's just called super greens. My water's boiling, so while my noodles are cooking, I'll continue working on the spinach. So I'm going to put these noodles in the boiling water, and these noodles are so long. You'll see, I'll show you one. It's crazy because when they're done, they're like the world's longest noodles, and we're going to have to cut them. See, that's one noodle. You don't really want to have that size noodle in your salad because it makes it hard to eat, so we'll cut them up. So 5 minutes is all it takes to cook these noodles. So I'm gonna watch my watch, and I know that in 5 minutes I'm gonna check it, but I'm gonna check it before 5 minutes because we don't want to cook them till they're too soft. We want to cook them until they're done. But if you overcook them, then they'll be, kind of gelatinous, I guess you could call it, and that's not good. So we're gonna put a little garlic clove in our spinach. So I'm just peeling it really quickly. And I'm gonna grate it in here so we don't have any big chunks of garlic. Got a little trash bowl down here, if you're wondering where I'm putting all my stuff. It's easy to get to that way. Okay, so I'm gonna just grate the garlic. So a little garlic and a little salt in the drained spinach that I squeezed all the water out of. And then we have a little seasoned spinach. It's gonna go into our noodle salad. Put that in there. And we'll kind of mix it around. And by grating the garlic, we don't get any big chunks of garlic. Some people don't mind the big chunks of garlic. I don't, but some people don't want to eat big chunks of garlic, just depends. All right, so I just think that's beautiful. I love spinach, and I could just sit here and put a little soy sauce on here, eat that whole bowl, and it would be delicious, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna set it aside, and we're gonna start making the other ingredients for our Korean noodle salad, or Japchae. I'm probably not saying it right because I don't have a lot of Korean knowledge. My mother was Japanese, and she made this for me. When she made it for me, I'm gonna check this real quick. Don't think it's done. Here's how I check it. You take one out, and then you pull it, and I can tell it's still really hard. I wasn't really paying good attention to the time, but I think I'll be able to check it. But I was pregnant with my son, who's now in his late 30s, and she came to visit me. And so at that time I was living in Utah, and she made, I guess she went to the Asian store one day and she made a big bowl of this Japchae, and I'd never tasted it before, and she told me, she said, "Oh, I made you some Korean noodle salad." "Oh, thank you, Mom." So that night I sat down and had it, and it was icy cold. It had been in the refrigerator. It had all this sesame and soy sauce and the noodles and the vegetables, and I'm sure she probably put meat in it because at that time I ate meat. I'm cutting the mushrooms, and I'm going to saute everything, all the vegetables individually. So that was just the best thing ever. It was the most delicious tasting noodle dish I'd ever had, and I always said I was going to make it. And so years later, it wasn't until years later that I actually learned how to make it. And every time I have it, I always think of her and how good that tasted. You know how sometimes when you just are in a certain situation and you have a good food memory? Well, that's one of my really good food memories. Okay, so it's coming along pretty good. I think it's been only 2 minutes. So I'm going to cut these mushrooms, and the way to cut the trumpet mushrooms is kind of, you know, just sort of lengthwise. You don't want to chop them, so then they end up looking like this, and we're just going to lay them in our pan. No, we don't need any oil. In the original recipe for this dish, everything is sauteed in oil. So by the time you get done with the dish, you have several tablespoons of oil, but I follow a plant-based, oil-free way of eating. So I can cook things without oil, and they turn out just fine. You'd be surprised that most food has plenty of liquid, especially plants have their own liquid. So we don't really need to add anything. We can just let the liquid from the plants come out. And this doesn't fit in my pan, so I'm just going to leave those, and then we can just cook. However, I have available close by some vegetable stock. So as these vegetables start to cook, if they start sticking or if they start being problematic in any way, then I just add a few drops of vegetable stock, or you could use water. So I've got plenty of vegetables to cook. What I'm going to do is start up another skillet over here, because each ingredient of our dish has to be sauteed, not cooked to death, but cooked some. So the next ingredient we're going to use is the carrots. I have 3 carrots here. I'll wipe my board off. And I love these carrots. I buy these at the gourmet grocery store, and they're the kind that have the greens attached to them, so they're super fresh and sweet. I don't know about you, but I have issues with carrots a lot of times, bagged carrots, where they're bitter and they don't have a very good taste. So it's getting close to time, and I'm going to check my noodles. Okay, I'm just going to cut these in, I want them in about 2-inch pieces. So these are going to be a little bit longer, and I'll eat the scraps later. And I'm going to cut them into julienne pieces by making slabs of the carrots. And then I'll cut those into little strips. So that doesn't take that long. And we just need, in the recipe that I'll give you, it'll say 2 medium carrots. But these carrots are so small. Sometimes those organic special carrots with the greens attached are just on the small side. So I'm using 3 instead of 2. But a regular sized carrot, you may only need 2. Just depends on how much you like carrots. And then I'm just cutting them into 1/8 inch strips. That's julienne, 2 inches by 1/8 inch strips. And yes, you could use a julienne tool or some kind of mandolin if you wanted to. I've done that many times, but for today I'm trying to use things that everybody would have, just a knife. And we don't have to do too many. You know, 2 carrots is not very many. So why, you know, get out a tool when it's that easy to make strips out of your couple of carrots. And I see the mushrooms are starting to cook. There's no oil in the pan, nothing, just mushrooms. They're not burning. It's a non-stick skillet. It's one of the Le Creuset pans, but it's the skillet. Oh, I'm going to check my noodles here. I'm busy talking, and it has been about 5 minutes. Whew. Don't do this at home, but I'm going to taste it. Okay, perfect. It's been about 6 minutes. And it's chewy. I gotta dump this really quick over my colander. How I know they're done is because they're chewy, but they're soft. So they're not, and I'm just putting it through the colander, and I'm gonna rinse them really quick. If they're still really hard and chewy, they're not done, and you wanna just cook them until, you know, they have the right texture, but not so soft that, you know, they're unpleasant, because it's just like cooking spaghetti. If you cook your spaghetti until it's too soft, it's not a good experience. You know, nobody likes overcooked spaghetti noodles. Well, no, it's hot. The same thing with glass noodles. You don't want to overcook your glass noodles. So I'm just rinsing them off. And I gotta get back to my mushrooms. And then I'm just gonna let them sit here and drain. Okay, they're cool enough. I'm just gonna let them sit here in the sink and drain for a few minutes and get back to my mushrooms. Oh, now my mushrooms, just with nothing, with no oil or anything, they're starting to brown, but they're starting to stick a little. So I'm gonna add the stock, because that just keeps them from sticking, and then they're still browning. And what I'll do is I'll probably add a little soy sauce. That one stuck kind of bad. I let them go a little too long, but you get the picture. And then to make them have a nice color, I'm gonna add a little soy sauce. So, you know, they look good. They look good to me. They have a nice color. See, like this one, no oil or anything, just in my nice skillet, has this beautiful brown color, and nothing wrong with that. So I can also add a little bit of soy sauce to this, because I think that'll give it a little flavor. I'm not going to add soy sauce to any of the other ingredients we're making, but I do to the mushrooms, because mushrooms can be kind of bland. And I'm going to move this pan over to where I have this other pan, just because it'll give me more space to cook the vegetables. This one over here, turn it down really low, move this one over here. Just got to juggle everything, that's just how it goes. Okay, so this one, the mushrooms need to cook just a little bit longer. It just depends on what mushrooms you use. Like the shiitake mushrooms don't take very long. These have a little bit more texture to them, so we want to make sure they're cooked. They're cooking a little bit, they're cooking fine. I don't want to burn them. I see there's a part of this pan that's hotter than the other part, so I'll keep an eye on that. So we got to get our carrots in the pan, and we're just going to put the carrots in here with a little salt. And then as each thing cooks, we're going to take it out and put it on a plate. We're not going to mix all the vegetables together, because in this dish, the vegetables are just cooked individually. That's just the way it is. It's not like a stir fry, because you want them to be on their own. And, you know, that's just the nature of the dish. Okay, so I've got all the carrots. I'm going to throw them in this skillet. You hear how it sizzles? So when you're cooking without oil, you make sure you get your pan kind of hot. And I'm going to add a little bit more stock to this pan, so that my mushrooms are going to cook in this little bit of stock and soy sauce, because they look a little dry to me. So they're in there, they're doing fine. And we'll just let them kind of simmer until they soften up, because we don't want them to be hard. And with the carrots, a little salt. We don't need to add any liquid, because nothing's happening. They're just kind of browning a little bit. And we want that. And then I'll add a little bit of stock in a minute. Okay, so what other vegetables are we going to have? We have our spinach, we have carrots, we have mushrooms. We're going to have bell pepper, and we'll cook that next when this is done. This is a bell pepper that I've already used partially, and I'm going to take 2 sides of it, And I will use the rest of this for my salad later tonight. But I only need, you know, about half the bell pepper. And these are really great for cutting into julienne pieces because the pepper length is about 2 inches, a little bit longer, but it's a good size. So I'm just going to cut those into nice strips. And this salad is so popular. I've brought this salad to potlucks. Book club is the latest one. We had a meeting not too long ago, the first one in about 1.5 years, where a group of friends got together to talk about a book, and everybody brings food. So a popular thing that I've always brought, and see that the carrots are starting to, even carrots release a little water, and they're starting to cook, but they need a little bit more time. They're not cooked all the way through. They taste really good though, that little bit of salt. So I'll add a tiny bit of vegetable stock, like a tablespoon, to speed up the rest of the cooking. And I'm gonna keep them a little al dente because that's the way I like them. Okay, and the mushrooms, I think the mushrooms are done. They are, you know, they've softened up. They've absorbed some soy sauce. They've cooked. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this pan off. And then, oh, it looks like the tofu is ready. So I'm going to take a little break, rescue my tofu, come back, and we'll make the rest of the vegetables. And then we'll start assembling. So see you back here in a minute. Okay, I have the bell peppers in here now. The red bell peppers you saw me cut right before the last part. And again, I've just got the heat on, medium high. I don't have any liquid in the pan, but I have my broth ready in case I need it. And I just wanted to show you our vegetables that we have so far. We have our mushrooms. You saw me make the king trumpet mushrooms, our carrots, and then our spinach. So we have those 3 things ready. We still have bell peppers and onions. So let's go ahead, and I've got a pan warming up over here to do the onions. I've got this onion I picked from the garden this morning, which looks wonderful. It's a white onion. I also had some red onions, but I got the white one for today. And there's something about onions from the garden are so sweet. They're just better than onions in the store. Maybe it's because I remember planting them myself, putting the onion starts in the ground, and the whole process. I just feel like there's just something better about homegrown onions. I put a little stock in my bell peppers, and then I'll turn them off here in a minute, but I'm going to cut these onions in just half-moon slices. Nothing fancy, not diced. Kind of thin, because we don't want gigantic thick pieces of onion. I'm going to use this whole onion because this is a really small onion, but grocery store onions tend to be gigantic, especially here in Texas. A whole onion in Texas is like 3 onions. Most of the time I use a half or sometimes a fourth of the onion because they're so gigantic. Everything's bigger in Texas, you know what they say. It's kind of true in a lot of things. All right, so I'm going to throw these onions in my skillet. Let's see, did you hear that? That skillet's, it's not on very high, but I could hear it sizzle. If you're cooking plant-based, no oil, and your pan is cold, it just doesn't come out as well. Make sure your pan is hot. Okay, so then I'm going to take these nicely done bell peppers. No oil was used, just little vegetable broth at the end to kind of finish the cooking so they wouldn't be dry. Same with the carrots. Nothing's dry, everything's cooked nicely, and we're good to go. We just have our onions, and then we have you know, several vegetables. We could have more vegetables if we wanted to. You know, we didn't have to just have those. I think I'm going to move my pan over here now. Ooh, sorry about the noise. That was kind of a unpleasant noise, wasn't it? Because this is the last thing we have to cook. So get it a little bit closer, then it's easier for me to demonstrate to you. Breaking up all the onions. And you really don't need oil to fry onions. I hate to keep harping on that, but you know, this oil-free cooking is new to a lot of people, so there's always a lot of questions about, well, you know, doesn't the food stick? Doesn't the food burn? Whatever. No, it's fine. It doesn't stick. It doesn't burn. It's fine. So you're seeing it yourself. Okay, and let's look at our tofu. Better get an oven mitt before I burn myself on it. I got it out of the oven. Remember the tofu you saw a few minutes ago? Here it is after 25 minutes at 400 degrees, and I'm going to cut it into cubes, and we're going to use those in our salad. I'll do that while the onion's cooking. And this tofu, again, is just something I make a lot of. I keep it in the freezer. I always have it around because it just comes in really handy. And also, I didn't mention Buddha bowls. Well, that onion didn't get cut very well. Take it out of here. You know how you make Buddha bowls with brown rice and vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, whatever, and then this is a great topping. So what I'm going to do with this tofu is I'm going to cut it in half and then cut it into little cubes, because that looks better in the salad than to have these giant strips. So I'm going to cut each half into a section of about 3 cubes. I'll show you a close-up of this, well, as close as I can get. I cut the planks in half lengthwise. So lengthwise like this. And then I turn them, I rotate them, cut them in half, and then cut each section into 3 pieces. And that gives you 1/2-inch cubes of tofu. Okay, so I can smell my onions starting to brown up. And I'm going to do something here real quick. I'm going to add a little stock to them so they'll cook a little bit more. And I've got all my tofu cubes done. And if under normal circumstances, I would be popping one of those into my mouth. But I don't want to have to chew and talk at the same time, so I'll spare you. So the onions have a nice little brown tinge to them. They look great. I put that little bit of stock in there. And you can use store-bought vegetable stock. You can use your own vegetable stock, whatever you like. Now, how do we know when the onions are done? Almost. They still have a little bit of that raw onion taste. I'm going to throw a tiny pinch of salt in there. Turn the pan down so they don't burn, and let them just cook. They don't have to caramelize. We still want them to have a little bit of crispiness, but we don't want them to taste like raw onions, and they still have that raw onion taste. So I'm going to take my tofu and put it on this plate with my other toppings, and then we'll start making our sauce or dressing, whatever you want to call it. This is a lot of tofu. We're probably not going to use all of it, but it's not going to go to waste. And when I've taken this salad, I've taken it to lots of different events where my friends will eat it, and none of them eat the way I do. None of them eat a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet. You know, they eat, it's Texas. Most of them call themselves carnivores, you know, and they still eat a lot of meat all the time. I'm going to add a little more stock to this. So, but I always bring something. It's my store-bought organic vegetable broth. But they're used to me bringing things like this. I have all these different peanut lime noodle salad, Japanese noodle salad, soba noodle salad, and then the Korean noodle salad. So they're used to me bringing things that are a little bit different. And this is one of those things. But they'll eat it up. It will be very popular. No one says anything strange about it. They like it. So I think you'll like it too. Okay, our dressing starts with soy sauce. In this case, we're going to have a 1/2 cup of soy sauce. This is a little 1/4 cup measure, so I'm going to use 2 of those. If you hear any odd noises in my room, it's my boxers. Usually you can hear them snoring right now. One of them is moving around. Just got up on the couch. There's a couch here in my classroom. A 1/4 cup of dry sweetener of your choice. We can use date, sugar, or we can use cane sugar. So today I'm going to use date sugar because I have been making a concerted effort to use less sugar other than date sugar or dates. So that has been working out really well for me. Get my little 1/4 of a cup. It's worked out well. I've replaced sweeteners and drinks and different things lately and started using date syrup instead of, I was using Truvia and stevia and that kind of thing. And you know, that's so artificially sweet, that kind of sets you up to have a sweet tooth. So I thought I'm going to try to break this taste for sugar, and it's worked really well. Okay, my onions look like they're almost done, and I'm going to go ahead and take them out of the pan because I can tell they're softer, so they're not going to have that raw onion taste. I'm going to put them on my plate with all my other toppings. And I added that little bit of vegetable stock so that they wouldn't overcook while I was busy doing other stuff, but you don't have to add as much vegetable stock as I did. But that kind of softened them up a little bit, which I like. I don't want them to be too hard, too crispy, because everything in this salad has cooked vegetables. All right, so I got all the onions pretty much. Get that out of my way. Make sure all my burners are off. Okay, so those are the toppings are done. I've got 1/2 cup of low sodium soy sauce, 1/4 of a cup of date sugar, a tablespoon of rice vinegar. Get a tablespoon. We could make more of this dressing. You can double it if you want it to have more dressing. I'm kind of trying to keep my sodium content down a little bit, so I'm not doubling this recipe, but if I was taking it to an event with the women that I know, I would make a double recipe of the dressing and take some with me to put it on there right before we eat it, because the noodles tend to soak up a lot of this, and so, you know, then you're left with kind of a dry salad. So I would say, you know, don't put it all on if you're not going to eat it right away, and then if you're going to have a little delay, make another whole recipe of it. We're going to put in a tablespoon of tahini. But, you know, if you're watching your sodium, just be aware that, you know, 1/2 cup of low sodium soy sauce still has a lot of sodium. So that's why I'm hesitant to tell you to make so much that it's drowning in the dressing, because you really don't need that much dressing. Okay, so we've got the tahini, the rice vinegar, the date sugar, the soy sauce. Now we're going to put some garlic in here, just 1 garlic clove, because Korean food tends to have a nice garlicky flavor, I think. You know, I think that's one of their signature flavors, and that kind of makes the dressing really good to me, to have that garlic. But if you're not a big garlic lover, you can go easy on the garlic. You don't have to put a lot in. I'm putting a couple of small cloves in here. I say 1 clove, but these are kind of small. And I'm going to grate them up so they're not big chunks. If I can find my grater. It disappeared. Oh, here it is. And then we're going to do something to our noodles to get them a little bit smaller. Okay, so this is not grating up too well. My garlic is a little soft. It's very fresh, organic garlic. So I'm going to have to cut it with my knife. That's okay. We can mince it up pretty small. But again, I don't want big chunks of garlic in my dressing, so I'm going to mince it up really small. And we could even turn it into a paste if we wanted to with our knife. You know, all we have to do to turn the garlic into a paste is kind of smash it with the side of the knife like this. Sometimes you can do that and add salt to it and it turns into a nice paste. So I kind of pasted the garlic. That's actually a technique, and it works so that you don't have any chunks of garlic. And then with date sugar, what you have to watch is I see some undissolved pieces of date sugar in here. Oh no, that's a piece of garlic. Huh, thought that was date sugar. So you have to kind of watch because date sugar will sometimes leave undissolved pieces. So you might, keep an eye on that. I don't think that's a very pleasant thing to bite into, a chunk of date sugar, although it probably wouldn't bother most people. Okay, so now we've got that done. Let me clean my mess up a little bit. And I'm going to take the noodles and show you what we do with these noodles. And let me run some water over them. They got a little stiff sitting here. So we're going to cut, we're going to trim the noodles. There's a lot of noodles. And we're going to put them in a bowl. This is not going to be our serving bowl, but this is going to be a bowl that I'm going to put the noodles in for right now. I've got another one here. We could use this bigger one. But as I cut them, I'm going to put them into this bowl. Find my scissors. I had them here. Ah, here they are. I knew I brought them in here. Yes, I got my kitchen. I only use them for the kitchen. And I'm just kind of taking clumps of the noodles and cutting them. And I'll do that with all of them because remember how long they were? We don't want to have these gigantic long noodles, although I wouldn't mind, but not everybody is crazy about that. So you get the picture. I'm doing it really fast. And you make sure you drain your noodles. I'm going to dump this water out because I don't want it. If you keep water on the noodles will, the sauce is not going to flavor your noodles as well if they're all watery. So that's why you have to make sure they're well drained. Okay, I gave them a haircut. These pieces don't seem very long, so we'll just stick them in here. All right, so we've got our noodles drained really nicely, trimmed a little bit. And now we're gonna add half the sauce to the noodles. Not all of it, but about half. I'm just gonna kind of guess half. Put that in here. We'll save the rest to put on later. Then I'm gonna just take tongs and I'm gonna mix the noodles up. Make sure they've got plenty of dressing because once you start adding the toppings, it's hard to get in there and get the dressing on the noodles because, the toppings get in the way. So we're gonna do it first with the noodles. And this package of noodles was 12 ounces. Some of them have 14 ounces. Sometimes the noodle packages are really small, but this one was 12 ounces. And I bought it in the American grocery store. I didn't even have to go to the Asian market. So that putting the dressing on kind of gave them a nice color. So now we're gonna put the noodles in our serving bowl. So I have my special serving bowl here. It's a wooden bowl. This was from trip to Vermont, the Andrew Pierce wooden bowl, which they make handmade wooden bowls, which are beautiful. So I'm gonna put the noodles in here. Then I'm gonna start putting the toppings on the noodles. And then I'll mix it all up. I've got the onions, the carrots, the bell peppers, and I think I'm gonna cut the mushrooms up because they're a little big, but I'll put some tofu in here. I don't think I'm gonna put all the tofu in. We'll use it later on as a topping. Oh, and don't forget the spinach. So I've got my garlic, salt, spinach. I won't use all of it either. I'll save a little bit of that. And then let me get my mushrooms situated here. So, look how it's looking. Doesn't that look tasty? And you saw me make every part of it, including the tofu, which most of the time I just tell people, here's the tofu recipe, make the tofu. But this time I actually made it so you could see how I do it. I'm gonna cut the onions into, the trumpet mushrooms into 1/2-inch pieces, because everything else is kind of on the small side. So we don't really want to have, one of our things gigantic and everything else small, because that doesn't really go together very well if you have, too many different size things in your dish. All right, So I just have to mix this up. Put my hand off a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of mix it all together. You know, you could serve it with everything separated in a nice little, in its own area, and then right before you serve it, mix it up just for presentation. That would be nice, but I'm not doing that because you need to see how it's eaten, right? So I'm putting all this stuff. It's got the green from the spinach, got the nice tofu, the red, the orange, the mushrooms, all of it, okay? And, oh my goodness, I can hear that snoring. And I'm just mixing it up really well. And remember I told you about how now we've got it all mixed up beautifully. And if your spinach is clumping together, you can manually move it apart. And then remember, I have the rest of the dressing, so I can pour the rest of the dressing on the top, and I can mix it in some more, okay? But I'm not gonna mix it in right now. I'm just gonna let it sit on top, and then I'll mix it in right before I get ready to serve it to you. To show you how it's served, I have one of my garden jalapenos, even though that's not a Korean dish. I love the taste of my garden jalapeno peppers. So I'm gonna put one of those on here just because I like it. I like the way it tastes. They're kind of on the mild side, but let's say that you don't have access to that and you like it spicy, you can put some red chili flakes on it. Or you can use you know, some kind of sriracha type of a sauce. You know, that would work too. And there you go. There's our dish. Oh, and scallions. I like scallions a lot. I don't think it's a typical ingredient, but I'm gonna take a scallion and I'm gonna chop it into thin rounds, and I'm gonna put scallions on top of this, and sesame seeds. Because I think the scallions give it a little bit of a fresh bite. So, you know, this is how you personalize a dish and make it your own. You know, put the things on there that you like. Sure, it changes it up, but it's still, if you like it, that's what's important, okay? So I don't ever look at recipes and say, oh, the recipe doesn't say that you should have that. I look at the recipe and say, this is really good, but I like such and such a thing, and then I'll add that. Okay, so let me get a bowl. We have our Japchae made. It's got plenty of dressing on it because we put some on the top. It's got all these delicious vegetables, spinach, tofu, and see, since I didn't put all the tofu in, I have a little extra over here. I can add it on top so that whoever gets it feels like they have plenty of tofu. I'm gonna wipe my bowl off. And there you have it. We have our delicious Japchae, and I don't have my chopsticks handy, but I can get a fork. And I can sample it. See, by cutting the noodles up, they're manageable. So I'll get the noodles and a piece of the mushroom. Uh-oh. It's really good. I think you'll like it. I can taste the rice vinegar, the sweetness from the date syrup, saltiness, garlic, you know, everything, the spice from all the different ingredients, and the meatiness of the mushrooms, and of course we have the sesame ginger tofu, which makes it great. So I hope you make this Japchae. I posted a picture of it when I took it to a party not too long ago, and I posted pictures of it on social media, and people that follow me were all saying, oh, I need the recipe, I need the recipe, I need the recipe. And I promised everybody, this was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I promised everybody I would make it on YouTube, because it's one of those things that most people have never heard of these kind of noodles. don't really know how it all comes together, and I thought it would just be easier to make it and show you what a beautiful dish it is, and then hopefully you can watch my video, make it for your friends, and enjoy it, and it tastes delicious cold the next day. So if, you know, of course, look at all I have to eat. You know, I'll probably have a lot left over, and I'll have it a couple more times, but I'm definitely gonna have some as soon as I get done here. So I hope you make this dish, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I do some Facebook Live videos every week. Usually I do Bean of the Week on Mondays, so like my Facebook page, Chef Julia, and I hope to see you on my videos. I usually do a new video every Wednesday about some dish that I love to cook. So thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.